Obviously, many people are disappointed, and rightly so, especially in the Gaza Strip, that the International Court of Justice did not call for a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire, in the ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza. I share that disappointment as well. And although I understand the logic that even though the ICJ did not make a direct reference to a ceasefire, it created enough evidence that only a proper ceasefire would be the best outcome to prevent the numerous violations that are being reported against the civilian population in Gaza. But it also left a lot of room for interpreting or misinterpreting the spirit of the ICJ ruling. I mean, let's remember that after all, the legal system is not a straightforward system of morality and ethics. It is also a subject of political manipulation. And it's already being manipulated by the Americans and by the Israelis. The Israelis are hanging on the point that the ICJ ruling did not deny Israel the right to self-defense. And the Americans are saying that the ICJ ruling is not really inconsistent with what the Americans have been saying all along. They don't want a ceasefire necessarily, but they want Israel to be more careful in how it conducts its war. And of course, Israel has not respected any of the calls that it should be more careful in killing less Palestinians in this ongoing genocide. Gaza is very disappointed by all of this, because these are people who are literally starving to death, and they cannot hang on the hope that maybe years from now justice will arrive in the form of legal text. It's honestly of no relevance to people who are eating homeless cats and dogs. And I learned from relatives in Gaza that in certain areas all the homeless cats and dogs have already been eaten by the starving population. So your legal language and your rulings is maybe historic in a sense, because it shows that Israel is not above the law and all the good stuff. But when it comes to an active genocide, it really did fail. It failed the Palestinian people. As a friend of mine put it, if the likes of Emmanuel Macron of France is now calling for a ceasefire, this is a guy who wanted to go to war in Gaza, similar to the through a coalition similar to the one that he was involved in against ISIS. That person himself is now calling for a ceasefire, and the ICJ didn't. This is not an attempt at spoiling anybody's fun, but to remind people that at the end of the day, legal language and politics are only about outcomes. If they change outcomes, they matter. If they don't change outcomes, they simply don't matter. And Palestinians have learned through 75 years of struggle against Israeli colonialism, apartheid, that all that they can rely on ultimately is themselves. They can rely on their resistance, their faith, their resilience, their patience, and the solidarity, the genuine solidarity, and unconditional solidarity they receive from communities, governments, civil societies from all across the world. But ultimately it comes down to their resistance. That's all I have to say. For now, I am on my way to speak at the Genocide Convention in London, and I do plan to share some of these thoughts. Thanks for listening.